7th Tachyon drastically changes Ryzeal moving forward. Let's talk about it. For the main deck, I have 3 copies of each prominent Ryzeal monster, as well as 1 node. This ratio for pure is pretty straightforward, and will remain like this for pure until we get Alliance Impact with Star Ryzeal, or if they hit any of the pieces on the ban list. And for the spell searchers, I play 3 copies of Bonfire, because it is better than Tachyon, seeing as it does not have to put a card back. But until this card gets hit, I will play 3 copies of Bonfire in every variant of Ryzeal. Then I have 3 copies of the new spell, 7th Tachyon. So as we just saw with the OCG reveals of the new K9 deck, being another Exceed-based strategy where you can utilize 7th Tachyon to search your engine. For right now, Ryzeal is the best engine to play with 7th Tachyon, seeing as you can easily search your Ext or Ice by revealing number 102 with 7th Tachyon's effect. Tachyon is just a better silent mining for your engine, which is exactly what the Ryzeal deck needed. I opted not to include any copies of Pot of Desires in this deck, because I believe the reason to play Desires before in Ryzeal is the lack of starters. Often what we ended up doing is siding out Desires when you go second, in favor of more Mulcharmies, as these are basically upstart goblins when you go second. And having any combination of these when you go second, be it Fuvalos with Meowls or Fuvalos with Perulia, often gave you 1 or 2 draws, allowing you to see your engine and therefore play on the next turn. An issue with Pot of Desires when you went second is that you did draw 2 cards, but oftentimes those cards ended up being a hand trap, meaning it was a dead card the turn you drew it off of Desires. And even if the second card was an engine card, it could be a redundant piece. Actually being an Ice or an Ext was not very likely. Therefore I decided with the release of 7th Tachyon, and us having 3 bonfires still in the TCG, would give you enough guaranteed starters to where you don't need to play Pot of Desires in this deck. All in all, this would be 16 1-card starters in your 40-card deck. Combining that with drawing 6 when you go second and resolving a Fuvalos when you go second, drawing additional cards, leads your deck to be consistent enough in any given tournament. Another thing I'd like to touch on is that the Ryzeal deck, whilst being compared to Zodiac, is not actually like a Zodiac deck. The Zodiac deck we had in 2017, and later with the Zeus Zodiac deck in 2020, was very much a deck based on the extra deck, where 1 Zodiac normal summon led you to a string of plays that led itself to more follow-up. However, with this deck, if you end on a detonator and you don't have any follow-up in your hand, the detonator alone will not give you follow-up. While when we had Broadbull in Zodiac, you could just overlay Broadbull on top of a Trident and that gave you a Zoo name for the next turn. Or you could Shaka 9 back a Zoo and then make an Exceed on top of the Shaka 9. So what I want to get to with this is that the Ryzeal deck is very different than the Zodiac deck, despite on paper maybe being similar. The grind game in the Ryzeal deck is based on the main deck and not the extra deck. Therefore, I decided to play 3 copies of a card most only play 1 of, being Ryzeal Cross. So the reason why I play 3 copies of Ryzeal Cross, despite being a brick, or not a card that works on its own, it's a very good card to complement your end board. A lot of people have the mentality that you have to hand trap Duo Drive when you play against a Ryzeal deck. While that is true for the most part, let's say your hand cannot deal with Detonator, then it's better to actually hand trap the normal summon Ice, because this will always get to Detonator despite you hand trapping the Duo Drive. However, if they were to hand trap the Duo Drive because they can't answer the Detonator, then it is much better for you to hard draw Cross, so your Duo Drive doesn't have to resolve. Or your Duo Drive can resolve by doing a particular combo where you make Detonator and Duo Drive, thereby playing around their effect negation, whilst not playing into Nibiru because you have Ryzeal Cross. I'll show a combo of this later, but having 3 copies of Cross just allows your turn 1 end board to always include a Cross, if you actually draw it, and most people don't hand trap your normal summon Ice or Ext, so it's safe to resolve. Thus I think it is better to play 3 copies of this than to play Cross out in this deck, for example. But this could of course change when we get to Alliance Impact and we get Star Ryzeal, being a way to search this before we get to Duo Drive. But for the format right now, before the ban list, and with Mace of the Master, I believe 3 copies of Cross is very good in the Ryzeal pure deck. Then I play 1 copy of Plugin. I believe the pure deck has to have something extra to make the end board good enough so you don't get ran over. And the plugin allows you to bring back a detonator that they kill, or to bring back a name and search follow-up, while giving another material to your detonator. That's it for the Ryzeal cards. Then I have 3 copies of triple tactical talents in the main deck, and 1 Call by the Grave. I think with 7th Tachyon, you could argue playing more of these greedier cards like Talents, which could be dead. Because if you go first and Tachyon resolves, unless you're expecting to get drawled, you can just put away the Talents. And also with everyone holding Fuvolos until the main phase, you can punish them with the Talents. And then Callby is just really good against the Mirror Match and against Malice, because most people pass on Firewall. With GWC06 for the White Binder, you can just Callby the White Binder, and they won't get to any follow-up. Then for my hand traps, I play 3 copies of Ash, 3 copies of Nibiru, 3 copies of Fuvolos, 3 Veiler, and 3 Imperm. As I talked about before, I think if you're on hand traps, then Desires is not the best in this deck. Because when you go second, your Desires will likely just draw into hand traps. So if you're always taking out Desires when you go second, I believe 7th Tachyon is a better starter than it in this deck. For the extra deck, I have 1 copy of Haggard Lizardos. You could play either this or Donner for linking away the Nibiru, but I think Lizardos is better right now. 1 number 102. You can technically summon this card, but it's for 7th Tachyon, so you can search X or Ice. 1 copy of number 41, but Goose got a terribly tired Tapir. 2 copies of Eclipse Twins. With 7th Tachyon, it is a main selling point to play Mitsurugi or Pure Ryzeal. Because of the extra spot, you have to commit to playing the Exceed for 7th Tachyon. And Pure can easily play 2 Twins, which is very good in the grind game. 1 Evil Swarm Exitanoid. 1 Tornado Dragon. 1 number 60 Dugar the Timeless. 2 copies of Ryzeal Duo Drive. As I talked about before with Cross, you don't need to resolve this card, so them hand trapping Duo Drive, as opposed to hand trapping Detonator, can actually be good for you. You could argue playing a third Detonator, and that would probably be the 16th or 17th card in the extra deck, but I really like having 2 Duo Drive. So if you go for the play where you want to attach a Ryzeal with Duo Drive, use X to send Duo Drive so you can attach a fire and not a light, therefore they cannot Bestial you. 1 copy of Abyss Dweller, 1 copy of Aggregator, and 1 copy of Typhon. Typhon is very important against Ryzeal, and while this deck often locks itself so you cannot summon it when you crack a board, it is important to remember that other decks also have access to Typhon. There are games, mainly against control decks like Labyrinth, if I open Ryzeal Cross. I tend to not even make Duo Drive or Tornado Dragon, I just make a Detonator, therefore playing around their Typhon. This is not only against Labyrinth, but it comes up against quite a lot of different rogue decks, where if you don't have an Imperm or a Veiler to negate the Typhon, it can be important to just summon 1 extract monster so they cannot make the Typhon. Because this card can completely crack the board by itself if you don't have Cross or you want to use Cross on something else, like a Furniture for example. And for the side deck, I have 3 copies of Purulia and 3 copies of Meowls. With a lot of Malice players playing more conservatively and only making the Firewall with the White Binder play, I think having Meowls and the hand traps in the main deck is enough. And against that deck I also side in the Lightning Storms and Duster to deal with their back row. You could cut Purulia to play Lancias instead, if you're really that scared of Malice. But for now, I think these are fine. 1 Duster and 2 Lightning Storm. Lightning Storm and Duster are very good against Ryzeal, because you can deal with all of their back row, like Imperm, Solemn Strike, and Ryzeal Cross. But it's also just a very good board wipe against monsters, for example if they make Caesar and whatnot in attack position, or against Labyrinth with their back row. Then I side quite heavily for going first, with 3 copies of Solemn Strike and 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. These cards are very good to beat their breakers, particularly Judgment, since they can negate cards like Ultimate Slayer or back removal like Lightning Storm or Duster. If you enjoy my content, make sure to also subscribe to my second channel, linked in the description box down below. There I'll be posting more personalized and exclusive content.